You know what she said?
Let them eat cake.
He took the bomb.
We're getting screwed, man. Every time we turn around, we're getting screwed. Oh, the revolution's going to be through podcasting for sure. That's the only way we talk. It's the little guys that take the brunt of everything. It's got to stop. Peasants, man. We're just peasants. Every one of us. You watch those old movies, you see the peasants in the background with the kings and queens walking around. We're those people. We're those people. Good morning, peasants. Welcome to another episode of The Peasant's Perspective. I'm flying solo again today. Ron is taking care of a sweet, sweet loved one who's recovering right now. So we forgive him for not being here. Really not a big deal, but it actually kind of is a big deal. That's why I'm a couple minutes late this morning. Anyways, so it's just me and you guys in the chat. So please, please, please speak up. Otherwise, I'm going to feel very, very lonely monologuing in here today. So let's go ahead and jump into what I have for us today. The first thing I have is last week we started to mention Representative Corey Mills. Representative Corey Mills apparently has some secrets in his closet, some skeletons in his closet, if you will. And Nancy Mace, last week after they tried to censure Ilhan Omar? Censor Ilhan Omar. Good morning, Pony Boy. Corey Mills was one of 4 Republicans that voted not to censure her, and his own censure was up to vote next. So presumably, and I think it's an open secret if it's not flat out in the open, he brokered a deal where he and 4 Republicans voted against the censure of Ilhan Omar to ensure that his censure also failed. Now, his censure is because he was having an affair with someone and was extorting her with text messages and pictures. Good morning, Doug. Good to have you. John Attackis, good to have you as well. So Nancy Mace apparently suddenly became aware of Corey Mills and has been posting about Corey Mills. So here's the 2 things that she's been honing in on. First of all is allegations of stolen valor. So Nancy Mace, posted this video this weekend.
Was blown up twice.
I was blown up twice, actually.
I was hit not once, but twice. I was blown up twice.
I was blown up twice.
It was a great experience.
Okay, so Nancy Mace is alleging Corey Mills was never blown up twice, ever, anywhere, and soldiers there say he wasn't. He also says he was a Green Beret. He wasn't. He was a medic. He was a medic in a motor pool. And she's like, why isn't that enough? Why do you have to amp up your bona fides? And then in addition, he also did this. So this is another thing that Nancy Mace is getting on him about, is that he signed, or his marriage certificate or his marriage application, he was married by an unindicted co-conspirator of the Trade Center bombing back in the 90s. Yes, he was married by I believe an imam. Mohammed Al-Hanout is who married he and his wife in New York years ago. Or actually, I think it was, where were they? They were in Virginia. But another fascinating, is that just the justice of the peace today? We have an unindicted co-conspirator serving as justice of the peace? Or do we have someone who went out and sought a religious leader that was licensed to do marriage certificates and sought him out? Very, very interesting. So anyways, again, it just kind of goes to show, when you get to know these people, you find things that you don't always want to know. One of the best pieces of advice I got from someone was, don't meet your heroes. Here's someone else who is a lot of people's hero, J.D. Pritzker. Don't know why he would be your hero, but he is going through a little bit of a scandal because he just recently took a picture with a murderer.
The reason this is getting so much traction is because the photo was of Governor Pritzker with a man now charged in connection to deadly Chicago crash on the Mag Mile. CWB Chicago first reported that 35-year-old Kellen McMiller, now accused of murder, posed for the photo earlier this month at an event highlighting peacekeepers who work in community violence prevention. Now, a spokesperson for Pritzker said they were troubled to learn of the allegations against McMiller, saying in part, quote, the governor meets hundreds of people in communities every week and is often asked to take photos. We are extremely troubled to learn that this individual was arrested for his alleged involvement in this serious crime, and we expect them to be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. And the spokesperson added that Pritzker did not know McMiller personally, says they took the photo down on the website after being notified that he was arrested. The man, McMiller, and several other men are accused of killing in the crash. As Mark Arceda, the 40-year-old, lived in Skokie, was on his way to work when the suspects in a smash-and-grab burglary crashed into him in a getaway car. His girlfriend gave birth to their son the day after he died. And tonight, it's not clear how McMiller, who reportedly had 4 outstanding warrants from multiple states, was able to participate in this event and pose with the governor.
How in the world do you get past the background check to be standing next to the governor when you've got 4 outstanding warrants in other states? It just goes to show the Democrats are not necessarily into law and order at all. And the problem continues. Not only do you have Democrats in Illinois taking pictures with alleged murderers, but you also have in Seattle the immigration issue. It's hitting close to home. This is Burien, a neighborhood not too far from me, where there was a double homicide committed by an illegal immigrant.
A 29-year-old man who ICE officials say was living in the country illegally is accused in a gruesome crime. He's charged with killing his girlfriend and her friend in their home in Burien. ICE has now filed a criminal detainer with King County.
The suspect is Marvin Ortiz Montesinos, who is behind bars. He also has a wife and kids back in Guatemala. As of today, Ortiz Montesinos is being held on a $10 million bail. Fox 13's AJ Janival shows us how family members of one of the victims are hoping the community can help with their funeral plans.
Investigators report after Victoria Aparicio Cruz broke up with 29-year-old Marvin Ortiz Montesinos, he went and brutally murdered her inside of their shared home, stabbing her more than 20 times, then killing her friend and their roommate, Janeth Gomez Hernandez, a mother of a 10-year-old boy. Investigators said Ortiz Montesinos stabbed her more than 40 times.
A 29-year-old man who ICE officials say was living in the...
It is so sad that that's happening. I almost closed out the entire stream. We gotta be very careful. So you've got this situation in, well, you probably want to see me. It's black screen, isn't it? All right. So you've got this situation going on all across the country where people have been immigrating for, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 years, quite a while, finding it in these different spots around the country. I'll never forget when I was in Missouri walking around the track in prison, back when I was in prison, and this guy walked up to me and he barely spoke English. I mean, very, very broken, knew a few words, like conveyed to me, "Can you read?" and handed me a piece of paper that he had just gotten from a case manager that had basically his calculations of his sentence time, his charges. It's like a standard sheet you can go get printed off anytime from the case manager. So he had this standard sheet and he wanted me to read it. And I'm looking at it and he's got a year and a day sentence for re-entry. So this is at least his third time he's been caught re-entering the country. And this time they gave him a jail sentence, a year and a day, which after good time trims down to 6 months ish. Now, if you have an ICE detainer, you don't qualify for good time. You serve your whole sentence, then you get deported. Well, he had an ICE detainer, but they were going to go ahead and ship him out before the 1 year because he had a ship date. And he wanted to know about this ICE detainer. That's what he was kind of pointing out. What's this ICE detainer? Because he had no other warrants. He just had one ICE detainer. I was like, "Oh, you have an ICE detainer." And I was like, "You're probably going to be deported." He's like, "Oh, no." And then there was a little note on there saying he could finish his sentence via treaty in his home country. And I was like, "Well, where's your home country?" He's like, "Honduras." And I'm like, "Do you want to go there?" He's like, no. He's like, really did not want to go to prison in Honduras. And I was like, "Okay, well, you're going to get shipped back." So we talk a little longer, and keep in mind, I speak Portuguese. He's speaking Spanish. We kind of figure it out as we walk around the track. We probably walked a half mile together. And he tells me he's from Ballard, which is it's a city just north of Seattle. It's part of the suburbs of Seattle. And he's been there for 20 years. He's got 2 kids in Ballard and 1 kid with another woman out in Pasco, Washington from years ago. And he's never learned how to speak English proficiently. He has worked in Ballard, basically in the underground, for 20 plus years. Now, for someone like that, have they integrated themselves in society? Yeah. Did I see on his criminal record that he had a bunch of DUIs and stuff like that? No. Right. But The fact that he found safe harbor here and was able to make it 20 years and navigate without ever learning English tells you we have a huge problem. In that video I just showed, the thing it didn't mention was that the 2 victims that were murdered were also illegals. This is a massive, massive problem. I was listening to another clip. Let me see. I have it pulled up. I'm going to jump it ahead in line here. And this is something that Jon Stewart on a podcast was talking about with his guests about how the Republicans were so brilliant and how they made this what's the word I'm trying to say, immigration problem hit home outside of the big cities where Democrats had total control.
The most brilliant move the Republicans ever did was, send 2 busloads into New York City. New York City, this is who we are. Yep. We are a sanctuary. Ellis Island, we are a city of immigrants. 2 buses of Venezuelans, and they're like, yeah.
Well, you know what's interesting about that, by the way? That was totally, to me, it was sort of misread at the time, because what people took that to be was a stunt for press, right? They took that to be a press stunt. It wasn't. It was a genuine long-term plan to make this a problem in a bunch of cities, and it was actually an effective thing. Right. It wasn't just one bus. It was bus after bus of people, and people decried it as being it's wrong. It's human trafficking. There were all these things. And then the press moved on and the news moved on. But those buses kept coming, and it became a huge liability in those cities. Right. So it wasn't a PR strategy. It was genuine policy that had a real impact on these different cities and really kind of think changed some of the dynamics on the issue.
And by the way, brilliant in the sense of saying this is what we're dealing with every day in much smaller places.
So basically the way the Republicans, and we're talking about the governor of Texas, the governor of Florida, DeSantis and Abbott, and maybe another governor here or there, as they would round up these illegals, they were prevented from deporting them. So what they would do is they deport them to another state. So this is where you get buses going straight to New York, buses going to Martha's Vineyard, buses going to all kinds of different places around the country. And what that did is it created a truthness to the phrase, every town a border town. Clearly, there's illegal immigrants spread all over the country. But if you're in some rural town, for example, Springfield, Ohio, right, you're not really accustomed to having large scale immigration. Maybe illegal comes into the community from time to time, right? Not a big deal. They stay in the workers' fields. They stand in the Home Depot parking lot. They fix your tile. No big deal. But when you drop 20,000 Haitian immigrants into a town like Springfield, Ohio of 40,000 people, people are going to notice. And that was replicated all over the country, both by Biden's policies, thinking that that was a good idea, and Republicans who kind of got that started. And this is an example of one of those, you break it so you can fix it type situations. The Republicans probably felt a little bit defeated. They're never going to be able to change immigration policy unless they can make the constituents feel it. And that's what they did, for better or worse. And I think there's a lot of carnage that happened because of that. But at the same time, we're sitting, I think the most recent numbers from DHS is about 500,000 deported and 1.5 million self-deported. Those are huge, huge numbers. On a different note, this is Marjorie Taylor Greene talking on the Capitol steps. I believe this was Friday. If it wasn't Friday, it was Saturday. And she's talking about what they found out from a couple things. They had a hearing with Alexander Acosta, who was the United States attorney in charge of the first Epstein conviction. They gave him a sweetheart deal. They've obviously met with the witnesses. There's been a period of time where Nancy Mace and others have gone in and seen FARA reports from the Treasury showing flagged transactions. And Marjorie Taylor Greene here reveals something that many of us have suspected. In fact, these words have come out of our lips from time to time, but hearing it come from her really puts a bow on it. It really makes this like, hey, this is legit, this is serious, and this is what's going on. So she's talking about the Biden crime family being possibly the largest crime syndicate this country's ever seen.
Well, my takeaway right now is that a lot of the press is not interested anymore in hearing about the SARS reports, but they're very much real. And the investigation that's happening through oversight is going to show that the Biden family is the largest crime syndicate that America's ever seen in politics. And what I read in over 2,000 pages of SARS reports is there is evidence, real evidence of human sex trafficking with Hunter Biden and Owasco, which is his law firm. That's not just some fake company. That's his actual law firm where he was paying prostitutes. That is human sex trafficking. And some of these women were from countries like Russia and Ukraine, as well as from all over the United States. I read that with my own eyes. And the SARS reports clearly say prostitution, and it was a prostitution ring. And these were many customers through Wells Fargo Bank. Also, what we found in the SARS reports is clear evidence. So we have this in the bank records too. It's not just the SARS reports. We have the actual bank records, and it shows the financial transactions of money being wired in from countries like China, other countries like Ukraine, other countries, UAE, Africa, money wired into shell LLCs. These were LLCs. Now remember, a lot of people have LLCs, but you should be producing a product or a service. If you have a company, if you have a real legitimate company, you're producing a product or a service. These were fake LLCs for money laundering. So money, we have the bank statement shows wire transfers of money going into these LLCs, and then direct payments going out to multiple Biden family members, not just Hunter Biden. We're talking about approximately 9 to 10, and we're finding more every single day because we still have many bank records still coming in. This is going to be the most explosive story that's happening, and I think it's probably one of the most important things we should be talking about. And here's why. I don't care if they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, I don't care who they are, but if an elected official, Congress, Senate, the White House, the president, vice president, whoever they are, if they are abusing their position of power for influence peddling, and they're making a fortune and getting rich off of it, or their family is getting rich off of it, that is corruption that the American people should never allow. They don't want it. The American people, if they really knew what's happening, and I hope they do very soon, because we intend to expose it all, and that's what we're going to do. When the American people find out about this, I am hoping that they're willing to take their political lenses off and go, this cannot be tolerated. And then, you know what I would hope? I'll say this too. If any other elected official is doing the same thing, I hope they're exposed too. And I don't care what political party they're in, because it's wrong. America should not be sold out to the rest of the world through influence peddling for corrupt politicians and their family members to get rich. And that's everything that's wrong in this country. And I think it's happening on a much higher level than we know.
So we started the show out showing stuff about Corey Mills, right? A Republican. Yet this Republican's got some shady stuff, some stolen valor allegations that he was married by an unindicted co-conspirator to the World Trade Center bombing back in the 90s, all kind of shady. And it starts to kind of make you scratch your head a little bit. Like, what's going on here? Why is this guy's votes not always line up the way they should? He's got one ideology on the campaign trail, but then his voting record shows something completely different. Why is he running cover for Ilhan Omar? It makes no sense politically, right? With Joe Biden, we've had this huge thing with, we're going to get to the bottom of these Epstein files. And, by the way, Trump's in the Epstein files. Are we really worried about that? It's obvious to anybody who has any familiarity with this, why exactly the Democrats have been hiding these reports, right? And these Epstein documents. So why all of a sudden, Trump's saying, hey, we're going to smear Trump. But then you've got Marjorie Taylor Greene here saying, hey, when these documents get released, where are you going to find out? Joe Biden was with traffic syndicate. Now, if you're a Republican and have been following Donald Trump for a couple of years, it's not the first time you've heard that, is it? Right? However, for the general public and for the political apparatus at large, once that stuff gets released, it's kind of no longer deniable. You can't just chalk it up to internet rumor with no evidence. Now it's real. They know this. People have sat in those briefings. Those reports are circulating around Congress. What's going on here? Why are we stuck in this situation where we can't get anything done? And the only explanation for it really is Trump derangement syndrome, straight up Trump derangement syndrome. So let me catch up on the chats here. The Debbie B, good morning. Thank you for joining me. Shantini, good morning as well. Pray the Rosary Daily, hello. Carlito and Tiffany, good morning, gents and ladies. And Carlitos, good morning, everyone. I love the fact that we have such a regular audience that comes in pretty much every day. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. And so there is a solution to this. How do we break the deadlock? Joe Manchin, who's no longer in Congress, no longer in the Senate, is retired, and I believe he's running for governor. Okay. He's still out there, and he was always considered like a maverick moderate in the Democrat Party. And a lot of that has to do with West Virginia is a deep state, and he was a blue senator coming out of West Virginia. He did that by being pro-union, essentially being a blue dog Democrat, right? By being pro-union, pro-oil, pro-coal, right? Those are all things that he espoused against his party to keep that power in West Virginia. And he probably believes it too. I mean, if you're a West Virginian, you're not probably too hot on solar panels. You're probably a little more excited about coal since that's your economy. So this is Joe Manchin and Bill Maher both saying, you can work with Trump. You can work with Trump. Oh, you know what? I think it would help if I shared my screen.
If just a Democrat says, Mr. President, we want to work with you. Help us calm this down. Help us heal the country. We want to work with you and secure the borders. We made a mistake. Can you work with me on legal immigration so we can have a country that we have today in the future? That's what has to be done. But you can't just fight.
The first thing you have to do is talk to him. I'm telling you, talk to everybody. Like
you've
we're
been
saying.
with the president. You've been with the president.
Exactly.
He's very accommodating.
I saw this weekend, last weekend, Jay-Z and Beyonce had dinner in Atlantic City with Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Do we not talk to them now either?
Because it's an issue they care about,
they
which
get
is
a
criminal
pass.
justice reform. I mean, that matters.
All the issues matter. And this is how any of them, if we're going to make any progress with this. But
he's your president for 3 more years. He's my president. He's your president. He's all of our presidents. My job, if I'm in a position as a United States senator or a congressperson, is to do everything I can to make my president successful, but never be afraid to speak truth to power. But you have to do it respectfully. You have to be respecting that office and the people that put you there, which is we're self-governing. Okay. We made a decision. We chose you. If we chose you, then I don't care. I'm not going to fight you. I want to work with you. I want you to succeed. And I said, Mr. President, we need that leadership now. We need you to step up. And if the Democrats, I said, calling him names, it's just like throwing fuel on fire. It's not going to make him any better. But he, individually, when you were with him, I've been with him individually, most accommodating, gracious. You can talk to him. He's engaging.
He's much more self-aware than he lets on in public. They have this thing where when they go out in public, it has to be all war all the time. I'm not saying that's a good way to handle it either. I'm just saying it's more complicated than that, and you're good. They have all the power. You're not going to do anything by just doing the left does have this bad attitude of go no contact. I mean, that's a big thing.
Yeah, the left are the ones that don't want to talk to Trump, and that's forced the Trump administration to adopt a wartime footing all the time. I think that was his big mistake in his first go at it. First term was that he just believed that people would do what was right for the country, and it just really didn't work out that way all the time. Clearly, it's kind of sad. Okay, so something happened there. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to play here too, in talking about you can work with the president. This is a CIA director, and he's on a leftist podcast. I can't remember exactly which podcast it is, but he's on a on a leftist podcast. He's a former CIA operative, and he offers some insights into what he sees happening with presidential power and how this wasn't just like a Donald Trump problem. The difference is Donald Trump came in and used the power that the legislature has delegated to the president. So this is a really good take on exactly what's happening. And then we're going to get into the FCC and the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel. And then we're going to roll into the Charlie Kirk stuff. Big weekend this weekend, but I want to get these news items out of the way before we get into the cultural item of Charlie Kirk, because they do play in together. Charlie Kirk and the cultural influence and what he did to America through his assassination, right, is a big, big deal. But simultaneously, it plays into this larger political narrative and this back and forth that's happening. So let's take a listen.
I agree with you that things seem radically different.
I did that on accident. Hold on.
To see the change in the first, agree with you that things seem radically different post-Trump. What we learned at CIA is that we really started to see the change in the first 2 years of the Obama administration. Because in the first 2 years of the Obama administration, Obama walked in and he was young enough and youthful enough that he saw the problem and he was like, I'm not going to play this game anymore. And he took the presidential powers that were given to him by all the congressmen that didn't want to have responsibility, right? He took those presidential powers and he used them. He was the most lethal president in history using covert action, which is his wing, his right as a president, as a chief executive.
You have to recognize, going all the way back to the Great Depression, prior to the Great Depression, the legislature had an immense amount of power. They controlled the purse strings, they controlled the law, and the executive branch, for the most part, operated in check to that, right? In check and balance to that. After the Great Depression, we started to see the New Deal, and we started to see the rise of executive branch agencies. This is where you get like the Tennessee River Valley whatever Act, and that's a new executive branch. And you start to see Department of Education in the 70s, and it just goes on and on and on. You have an expanding executive branch. Fast forward to 1984, and you have the Chevron decision, which tells the executive branch that they get to do rule defining and law making. So the legislature says to the EPA, we want clean water. And then the EPA decides exactly what rules, laws, mandates, codes, statutes, etc., get put in place and how they're defined in order to accomplish the legislative mandate of clean water. That was overturned by the Loper-Bright decision that said that the executive branch no longer has decision-making ability. But prior to that, the executive branch essentially could make the laws as long as there was some delegation from the legislature to accomplish a thing. How that thing was accomplished was up to the executive branch. And Obama was very good at using the executive branch agencies and expanding its power.
Executive to use the most lethal president in history. He was the first one to use a record-breaking amount of executive orders to push his agenda across. And when the Congress turned blue, he used that leverage to get across policy that mattered to him. Whether or not you like that he did that, that set a precedent. And then when Trump took office, he was like, well, this has already been done before, so I'm just going to do the same shit that's been done before, and you can't say that it's my fault. So that's when we started to kind of see.
Now he's really the most lethal president in a different way.
In a different way. But we have this waffling now. And it's,
for those of you that are wondering, that's Blossom from the, I think, in the 80s and 90s TV show. She also reached her fame in, what's it called? What's the pop culture? It's a current show. It's about computer guys in California, physicists. Gosh, I can't remember. Somebody put it in the chats. Anyway, she's Big Bang Theory. She's on Big Bang Theory, and she's also actually a neuroscientist. She has a PhD. Anyways, I can't remember her name. It's hard to pronounce. She's Jewish.
It took 8 years for Obama to basically exercise these rights, these privileges, is the right word. He took 8 years to use these privileges, and now we're going to be feeling the ramifications for many, many decades. As presidents have to choose to reel themselves back in, or the other two branches of government have to step up and do what they're supposed to do and be that check and balance.
It doesn't seem like we're ever going back.
There's no check and balance now. I mean, the Supreme Court used to be, for, again, like the bleeding heart liberals among us, like, well, at least, well.
So notice how there's no discussion here about eliminating the power of the executive. It's eliminating the power of Donald Trump, right? Oh, we're left with just the Supreme Court. They set this up. They've been in power the majority of the time, specifically the total amount of time if you count it as the uniparty.
Oh, not anymore.
I agree with you. I completely agree with you that I don't think there's any going back. And I think that the amount of time it's going to take for us to find some semblance of stability is such a long period of time that we have to be asking ourselves the question, do we want to be here in the middle of all that adolescence, or do we want to go somewhere else and exist somewhere else while the American community, while the American people figure it out? I agree with you
for a second. Do we want to be here, or do we want to be somewhere else? We're going to address that thought in just a moment. But before we do that, I was going to do a shameless ad read, but we don't have enough people online, so it won't let me do the ad read, so we're skipping it. Okay, this is the big differentiation between elite and globalist and those that think they have the ability to country hop, right? Do we want to stay here in the United States while they figure it out, or do we want to find some other place? That's the differentiation line between him and the peasants. The peasants can't run. There's nowhere else to go, right? Not only do we believe that in our core, at least here in the United States, we have a fighting chance with the Bill of Rights and the culture that at large is still out there supporting freedom and liberty, but we can't leave. We're tied to the land, right? No matter who's in charge, we got to live here. This is where we belong. And that is something that clearly he's become detached from the land. He doesn't have a patriarchal affiliation to his neighbors or his community. Somehow through his service in the CIA or the way he was raised, he's been completely detached from a sense of community. This is what we are up against. Literally, people who are like, oh, we can just get out of here. Rich people are like, we'll fix the United States and then we'll get out of there. That is a huge, huge problem. Now, they did reference executive power and how that executive power works. I like to take you guys a little bit behind the scenes, and I found this great video by a guy named Jason. Don't know who he is. Shout out to him. Jason the Chow on TikTok posted this video talking about the FCC and the banning of Jimmy Kimmel and his firing. And online, right, a lot of people trying to make this some type of Charlie Kirk versus Jimmy Kimmel. Who's the real martyr for free speech? The guy that got his neck blown out, or the guy that got fired for making a joke that was a total lie, right? And how does that work? This all has to come into public resources, public interest, the Commerce Clause, and the ability of Congress and the government to regulate commerce. This is a much bigger issue than just the government trying to get someone fired. First of all, I don't believe the government did it that way. But what we see here behind the scenes dealing with this airwave bandwidth is a much bigger conversation. The more you understand, we're only as good as the information we have. The more you understand, the more you can see through some of these political squabbles and see the underlying battle that's happening here. So let's listen to why it is that there's such a fit over Jimmy Kimmel getting fired, and exactly why certain people on the left are calling it a fascist move. And I might even throw my hat in that ring.
To me, why this FCC thing is so much bigger than Jimmy Kimmel.
Oh, it's so much bigger. Okay, so to understand it, you have to first understand how television works. It's not magic, it's science. In the air, we're broadcasting frequency waves information, right? But each frequency has to be clear for only one channel.
So that way, wherever I'm in LA, I get channel 7.
Channel 7 if you tune into this frequency. Now, who controls who gets to use which frequency?
The FCC.
The FCC. And it's this, right? The United States Frequency Allocation. This is the radio spectrum. So each of these bands can be used for a variety of different things scientifically, right? There are limitations with each band. These blue ones are broadcasting.
Okay. So by radio, you just mean like radio waves.
Radio waves.
Okay, cool.
Right? So within these frequencies, the FCC, the government says nobody else can use this except for who we allow. And they license those bands out to Sinclair, Nextel,
okay,
local
and that's
radio
why
stations.
they were saying they were going to threaten to pull the licenses from ABC or whatever.
They were going to, they threatened Sinclair and Next, right, saying we are.
Okay, so to understand this, these airwaves are public property. They belong to we the people. They're inseparable from the land. They're just blank airwaves. That is, and because you can broadcast on it, that is considered a resource. And resources that are public is resources in the ground, resources that are part of the land. From dust we come, to dust we go. Therefore, they're part of our dominion, right? They get licensed. We've organized a government. We've given them certain powers. One of those is to regulate commerce and to manage public resources, including this. Okay, so they're supposed to manage these resources. And part of the deal is if you're using these airwaves, you have to be in the public interest.
We have the power over you. And so then they exerted their power over Disney, ABC. Because like everyone's talking about, oh, Disney's this big company, like they should be able to do this. No, they're not. Disney is a circus troupe that travels town to town, right?
Okay.
Nexstar, Sinclair are the guards on the roads, right?
Like you can come here.
You can come here, you can't come here, right? They're much bigger than Disney is.
So, and the reason why we have separate distribution from the makers like Disney and Sinclair is because we wanted to not have monopolies.
Originally, right? Like RKO, I don't remember, right? Like NBC used to be way bigger because they would control both the roads and the shows.
Okay.
And basically they were like, we're going to split that. But the even bigger battle is since then we have discovered a very great use for this broadband frequency.
For these radio frequencies.
And you can see it here again on this chart, right? If this is broadcast, these that are pushing in are mobile.
Like mobile data?
Mobile data. So if you remember when Sprint was AT&T was trying to buy Sprint, and the FCC basically said, no, you're going to be too powerful. What did they mean? They didn't mean that, oh, all the phone customers, they didn't care about you, they didn't care about us, right? What they meant was everyone was gunning for Sprint's broadband.
Oh, so they can use more, send more data.
So they could send more data, so they could have more people use it, right? Again, this isn't magic. This is science, guys, right? You watching this is science.
Okay.
So the battle is also between who wants those broadband licenses from the FCC. Big tech does, right?
Oh, but right now broadcast
gets them because of tradition, and the idea is for public good, that poor people out in the middle of nowhere should be able to access the information through television waves.
Because it's all you need is a TV and an antenna.
It's not free, but it's not expensive, right? Yeah. Nowadays, like you could get a $15 antenna and a $20.
So if you were like in the middle of nowhere, or you were very poor, like in the city,
you would get earthquake notices. You would get like whatever, all that stuff.
Local news.
That's the justification for it. But why would big tech why would the rich people? Why would the billionaires and the oligarchs want people to have free stuff?
They want us to pay for it.
They want you to pay for it.
So if they get rid of these legacy broadcast medias, and they can try to buy those licenses, they can try to or like have the FCC give it to
and
them.
Make you pay for internet in order to get basic information, in order to be part of society.
Oh my gosh.
And so this is FCC flexing its muscles, right? It's first saying, okay, can we make the circus troupe, can we make Disney bow to us?
Like
right?
Dance for Us.
And so the answer is yes. And then also, can we make Nexstar and Sinclair dance for us?
Exactly. Can we make Nexstar and Sinclair dance for us? So the allegations coming from the left that the Republicans are being kind of fascist, right? They're using government force over private business. First of all, welcome to what you created. Okay. Fascism was created after the Great Depression, right? Where the government got involved and expanded the Commerce Clause and the regulation thereof to the point to where you get through the 1940s and 50s and you've got the Supreme Court saying that a farmer growing wheat on his land, not for private consumption, not for commerce, could be regulated because if all farmers did this, it would be not in the public interest. Expanded it greatly. So Donald Trump has taken that power that's been given to the executive branch, and instead of being kind of laissez-faire with it and letting people do whatever they want, he's saying, no, I'm defining what public interest is. He was asked about Brandon Carr because you've got Ted Cruz who called Brandon Carr a mob boss. He's being a mob boss, and Trump was asked about that.
On the top subject of free speech, Ted Cruz compared Brendan Carr to a mob boss, the way he's threatening television stations and saying it's absolutely dangerous for the government to determine which speech is okay and which is not. What's your reaction to Ted Cruz?
I think Brendan Carr is an incredible American patriot with courage. You know, it used to be.
For those of you that don't know, Brendan Carr is the FCC chairman.
I remember in the old days that networks would have to get licensed, relicensed, and it was always a big deal. You know, they had to show honesty and integrity. When you have a network, again, I'll use the same numbers, whether it's 90 or 94 and 97, all different numbers. But when you have networks that give somebody 97% bad publicity or 94% bad publicity, I think that's dishonesty. And you know, they're getting free airwaves, right? You know that, right? You get them for nothing. These airwaves, they make millions and millions of dollars. The news makes millions of dollars. ABC, your network. I mean, your network wrote very badly about me, and they had to pay me $16 million.
So you think I wasn't right, or that Brendan Carr has a right to take away the license?
I think Brendan Carr is a courageous person. I think Brendan Carr doesn't like to see the airwaves be used illegally and incorrectly and purposely horribly. Doesn't like to see a person that won the election in a landslide get 97% bad publicity before the election. I mean,
when you think about that, right, things being in the public interest, how could you possibly have a news channel that's supposed to be in the public interest that gives 97 negative coverage to someone who won 50% of the vote? That is clearly not in the public interest, like by definition.
It's amazing that I won the election with that. But here's what happened. The people have given your networks no credibility. They don't give them any credibility, John. If they did, they wouldn't vote for me. They wouldn't have voted for me. When you look at, I mean, you could also say the liberal media, the liberal left, when you look at these stories and papers, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about, I assume you're talking mostly about the networks, but they have a licensing procedure, and you can read it as well. They have to show honesty and integrity. And when they take a good, well, I think the people decide. That's why I'm president. When they take a great success, like you often do, and you make it into like it's a loser, or you put a negative spin on it, I don't think that's right. So I think Brendan Carr is a great American patriot. So I disagree with Ted Cruz on that.
Yeah, Ted Cruz is like, he's a mob boss. And Trump's like, just doing what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Taking care of the public interest. How could you possibly have ABC, NBC, and CBS, which broadcast on the public airwaves? How could you possibly have them having 97% negative coverage? It's okay to have the MSDNC or the Communist News Network. Those are cable. They run differently. Okay, you're picking your bias. When you're on ABC, you don't get to pick. When you're out in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa and all you get is radio waves, you're getting ABC, NBC, and CBS. Many of us that are here, I know we got a lot of boomers, but we grew up watching 4 or 5 channels. That was it. It had to be in the public interest. Couldn't hurt the public good. So very, very interesting. So finally, we've gotten to the point where I can do an ad read. So we are doing one. Hey, football fanatics, are you ready for some primetime NFL action? Tune in to Westwood One for all the gridiron glory you crave, from jaw-dropping touchdowns to game-changing plays. Don't miss a moment of the excitement. Catch every snap, every tackle, and every victory on Westwood One Sports app. On Westwood One, sportsapp.com, via Westwood One station streams, or by asking Alexa to open Westwood One Sports. If it's the NFL, it's on Westwood One. I actually missed my chance yesterday. I go every Sunday, I go to a sports bar and have lunch with a friend. It's a standing meeting. Everybody's invited. Just figure out a way to get a hold of me. I'm happy to have you. But we always get to watch, like all the sports games that are on. And I missed that this weekend. And I'm surprised because I don't watch a ton of sports, but I do love sports. And I really love going every weekend to watch that. So the Westwood One Sports app could help you keep track of your favorite NFL teams. Okay, so back to the show content here. So we have some CNN commentary on what Brandon Carr has been doing, and they expose that Brandon Carr is on very stable ground.
What he's doing, knows the law, and has an active remit from the White House to do what he's doing. He is on very safe territory here, and the idea that he's going to be drawn up to hearings and something bad's going to happen to him via the Hill, not possible.
Well, I do think that, again, back to MAGA not necessarily agreeing with his comments, and he was essentially threatening ABC to fire Kimmel. And talking about abuse of power, and it's just more than the media at this point. We talked a little bit about, or like Trump talked a little bit about, going after organizations and deeming them terrorist organizations. This is another place where the federal government is using their authority to go after progressive organizations because they don't like what they're doing. Again, shoes on the other foot. If a Democrat wins in 2028, do they really want a Democrat going after the Heritage Foundation and trying to deem them as a terrorist organization? I think it is their MAGA and Republicans and the administration are on very sticky ground right now. And if I were Ted Cruz and others, I would be speaking out because you do not want this to happen in a Democratic administration.
I think that's fair, but I think that everyone on the Hill knows that Republicans and Democrats play by 2 different sets of
You're
rules.
right about that.
And that.
So he starts out by saying, basically, the Republican, Trump is on very solid footing and Brendan Carr's on solid footing with what he's doing here, which when you see the explanation we just saw, you clearly see this isn't about censorship. This is about controlling airwaves and what the public interest really is. Got to see it from that lens. Now, Ty Cobb, who used to be an attorney for the president, turned on the president completely. This is actually one of the more shocking things I've ever seen. He completely came out against the president, and I don't know if it's because he thinks the president's on the losing side and he's just trying to, attach his wagon to the winning side. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but Ty Cobb is making comparisons between Trump, J.D. Vance, and Goebbels and Hitler.
Well, I think, Kristen, that it's evocative of what we've seen throughout history. I mean, in 1939, Dr. Goebbels, at Hitler's instruction, removed 5 comedians, or wittices, as they were called at the time, from the airways in Germany, and for criticizing or making fun of the government in a satire way. Putin, when he took over in the early 2000s, one of the first things he did was systematically silence critical media outlets, and independent TV channels were bought out or shut down. Trump is waging war on people who offend him. He's all about vengeance. And sadly, his subordinates, like one of the Project 2025 authors, Brandon Carr of the FCC, are following in line, and perhaps the Presidential Crimes Commission that Representative Swalwell called for recently can consider this at the end of this administration. But these people are, abandoning our constitutional rights and our constitutional freedoms. Even Senator Loomis today, by saying, she doesn't feel like enforcing the First Amendment at this point, despite having, liked it when it suited her. That's a violation of her oath of office, where she takes an oath to preserve and protect the Constitution. So I think this is really tragic. And I think, as Carr said yesterday, there will be more shoes to drop. I think we can count on that. This will be 3.5 more years of vengeance.
And there's a lot of people out there tweeting, I voted for this. 3.5 more years of vengeance, please. Again, when you go back to Barack Obama and you see how he took all this executive power that has been pooled up but had been essentially unused. Why do I think it had been essentially unused, right? It had been used a little bit, obviously Patriot Act, stuff like that. But the reason is because our presidents were part of the machine. Right? They didn't want to make their legislative friends happy. They owed them favors. They tried to, split the baby, so to speak, until Obama came in and he's just like, I think I can take total control. And he did. And now we know he took so much control that he was able to actually weaponize the government, including one of the things he did, which was getting rid of the Smith-Mundt Act, which we talked about. Basically, it allowed it allowed the government to propagandize the American people. Now, propaganda is a fancy word for lies. There might be a truth in there, but for the most part, it's lies, right? Propaganda means one-sided narrative. Whether you're on the side of truth or not is irrelevant to the propaganda. So Donald Trump, using his executive power, is going to eliminate the Smith-Mundt Act, the way it's written by executive order. And I will say this. If Congress does anything to change this, it can't be put back by executive order. That is one of the great things about the Loper-Bright decision. As Trump gets rid of regulations, they can't just be put back in by executive order. They have to be put back in by the executive branch. So the stuff he's doing as far as limiting some of the power of the government is massive. Right? Because it can't be put back. Simultaneously, he's exercising control over the things that he can and needs to exercise control over, for example, the airwaves, to make sure that those things that you can't get rid of or roll back actually function in the public interest, to turn on the checks and balances of lawsuits, threatening licensing, and things like that in order to restore the checks and balances to government. So Donald Trump has one of these break it to fix it mentalities, and simultaneously he has a take the maximalist position on everything. Use all the power they've given you, and if they don't like it, they'll pull it back. If they do, then use the power for good. At least that's his mentality. So here he is talking about the Smith-Mundt Act and restoring it because he doesn't believe that the media should be allowed to lie to the American people.
A landslide times two. When you have that level of popularity or voter support, as I did in the last election, and yet 97 and 94%, different numbers. You see different numbers with different stats. But 97, 94, 95, 96% of the people are against me in the sense of the newscasts are against me. The stories are they said 97% bad. So they gave me 97. They'll take a great story and they'll make it bad. See, I think that's really illegal, personally. You can't have a free airwaves. You're getting free airwaves from the United States government, and you can't have that and say, and somebody that just won an election, and I had to go through this during the election. I think it's a miracle that I can win. When 97% of the stories on the networks are bad, or whatever it may be, whether it's 89, doesn't matter. It's a tremendous number. You know it, you report it all the time, and it changes. But when you have that kind of a negative reporting, fake negative reporting, when they take a great story and they make it into a bad story constantly, that's what they do. Look, 60 Minutes took Kamala's answer and they threw it out and they gave her a different answer so that she sounded competent. When things like that happen, George Slopadopoulos from your network, right? George Slopadopoulos had to pay $16 million to me because of what he said. And that's ABC. You had to pay more than that. Your network had to pay more than that. So I think it's very sad. But I think that reporting has to be at least accurate to an extent. Again, when somebody is given 97% of the stories are bad about a person, that's no longer free speech. That's no longer, that's just cheating. And they cheat. And they become really members of the Democrat National Committee. That's what they are, the networks, in my opinion. They're just offshoots of the Democrat National Committee. Mr. President.
One of the things I point out in Common Sense Applied Today, which I wrote in prison, was that the two political parties, the Republican and the Democrat Party, have essentially become the personage of the crown. They are above the law. The parties, plural, are above the law. The parties collectively decide what the law is going to be. The parties collectively set the agenda. And while they're in a battle against each other, they're really like the Harlem Globetrotters and the Washington Generals. Okay? They might switch uniforms from time to time, as in, okay, right now the Republicans are in charge and the Democrats are in charge. But the MO has been Democrats spend and expand, Republicans slow it down and let the economy in the country catch back up. Then the Republicans come in and they progressive things. And then the conservatives come in and they just stop the progression until the country catches up. That's been the pattern. Harlem Globetrotters, Washington Generals, back and forth. It's one production. It's one company. They get on the same tour bus to go on tour. It's not two separate teams. It's one team with the good players playing one role and the bad players playing the other role, right? Well, we're just the obstructionists. We're the advancers. That's what's going on here. And Trump sees through that. He's like, look, these media, the government and public interest has been weaponized against the public. It doesn't get any simpler than that. Public interest has been weaponized against the public, and they're trying to take it over. Now, Lindy Lee, who was one of the advisors on the Harris campaign, and we've covered her a couple times, she split off from the Democrat Party, or at least kind of like, became persona non grata by revealing what was happening inside of the Harris campaign. I'm going to take off my jacket. It's just warm enough in here. I'm wearing my The Man, the Myth, the Legend shirt today. Super exciting. Before we watch this video, I want to catch up here. John Atakis, I understood that the Titanic sinking was used as a reason the government stepped in on the public airways. I didn't know that. I'm not sure how that fits. Railroads grabbed up a large, this is from G. Pazer, railroads grabbed up a large chunk of the airwaves. The act was Radio Act of 1912 and then the Radio Act of 1927. Yeah, very interesting. There was a lot of changes in the last century. I mean, a lot. Over at 1776live.us, we go into great detail about some of the changes that our government and the way our country operates went through over the last century. Okay, so this is Lindy Lee being interviewed by Anna Kasparian, and she's talking about why it is, now we're getting on to Charlie Kirk, why it is they have smeared Charlie Kirk so much, and why there's two narratives running. You've got Charlie Kirk, the saint, the martyr for free speech, and you have Charlie Kirk, the racist, misogynist, anti-feminist, right, who couldn't change his mind about anything, right? This bad attitude. And Lindy Lee explains why it is that the left has to change the narrative on this, because on top of the political aspect of this, power, right? Raw power, taking over the FCC, taking over the DOJ, taking over the EPA, taking over all these different agencies, getting rid of USAID, right? On top of all of that, a sheer battle for power, there's also a civilizational struggle that's happening right now. Our civilization allowed the Democrats to do what they did. Trump represents a civilization that would not allow that, a civilization that's bound by a higher code. Oh, let me share the screen. A lot of setup for that, and then I didn't share the screen. So this is Lindy Lee.
I want to make sure that people understand why they are lying about Charlie, why they are defaming his legacy and desecrating everything he's been fighting for. And that's because we are right now in the midst of a propaganda war. They realize that Charlie Kirk is incredibly effective. They also realize his murder has been galvanizing millions of people around the country and across the globe. And that is why they are tarnishing his legacy and distorting everything that he says, because they also understand that a lot of the times people don't bother, like Anna said, looking into nuance. They only read the headlines and then they move on. They don't bother to do any due diligence on what exactly he said. Another thing that I want to draw your attention to is that in recent years, In the era of Trump, young men have been shifting dramatically to the right, more conservative than young women. And I think that has a lot to do with figures like Charlie Kirk, making it cool again to be a conservative family guy. And they see Charlie Kirk as a threat, and that is why they are working overtime. It's overdrive right now. They're doing everything to dismantle his legacy.
Charlie Kirk represents a conservative man, a family man, and he represents lived Christianity. This is a big deal. Charlie Kirk believed in debating people, and presumably the left, people like, Manchin and others, would acknowledge that as a classical liberal value, and they wouldn't be too upset about it. Listen, if our ideas are good, we can debate them, we can agree to disagree. But what Charlie Kirk exposed, and one of the things Charlie Kirk really lived by, is he could debate you secularly. Like, he openly said all the time, all of my positions I get through reason and logic, and I can debate them without bringing in a moral code or the Bible. Totally cool, fair enough. But where he came to his solid opinions that wouldn't change came from his belief system. So, for example, a big one on abortion. He was never going to bend on abortion. He would debate it logically, but even if he was beaten in debate, let's say there was some, beating debate, right? And he could get beaten and the logic went to the fact that we should have abortions at 10 weeks and less or something. He would then lean on his faith. That makes him unbendable and unbreakable, and that's what they were afraid of. They were afraid of the fact that behind the good arguments, which if you have counter arguments, you can argue. You want to go high tax rates, low tax rates, there's an argument for both, what you're going to use the tax money for, all that kind of stuff. But when you're getting down to the core element, the binary choice of do you support life or do you support death? Do you support the way God made you naturally as a man or woman? Or do you support that your choices extend all the way to deciding your gender, to override the creator's program, right? When it came to stuff like that, he was unbendable. And at his memorial this weekend down at the State Farm Arena in Phoenix, right next to the Renaissance Hotel, where I used to do all my real estate training, this was big time on display. You had a big chunk of Trump's cabinet there. I actually had an uncle who was in the audience sitting a couple feet in front of Donald Trump down on the lower level, that kind of thing. Anyways, very, very huge event. Huge event. Again, Charlie Kirk gets killed, and there's prayer vigils, there's mourning, there's declarations to action politically. When George Floyd died, the country burned down. Totally different response, immune response to this kind of stuff. But look at what's happening here. This is Marco Rubio, your current Secretary of State. This is what they're afraid of. Right? They're afraid of people who live their Christian faith. This is why, in their mind, Charlie Kirk had to die. It wasn't just about debate. You want to have a debate, you can go talk with Milo Yiannopoulos and stuff like that. He's going to come up in many regards as morally bankrupt. Charlie Kirk was not that. He was the guiltless man. And what this brought out in the people who loved him and supported him was an ability to testify.
His deep belief that we were all created, every single one of us, before the beginning of time, by the hands of the God of the universe, an all-powerful God, who loved us and created us for the purpose of living with him in eternity. But then sin entered the world and separated us from our Creator. And so God took on the form of a man and came down and lived among us. And he suffered like men. And he died like a man. But on the third day, he rose unlike any mortal man. And to prove any doubters wrong, he ate with his disciples so they could see, and they touched his wounds. He didn't rise as a ghost or as a spirit, but as flesh. And then he rose to the heaven, but he promised he would return, and he will. And when he returns, because he took on that death, because he carried that cross, we were freed from the sin that separated us from him. And when he returns, there will be a new heaven and a new earth, and we will all be together, and we are going to have a great reunion there again with Charlie and all the people we love. Thank you, and God bless you.
Awesome. That, coming from a Secretary of State, is a pretty bold stance. Port Ange Hunter, I'm assuming that's Port Angeles Hunter, first time on break and out hunting. Well, you should have invited me. I'm in your neighborhood if it truly is Port Angeles. Should have invited me. I need to go hunting. I'm desperate for a hunting partner. My other hunting partners have all moved on with their lives. Okay, so you can see you know, when you've got Marco Rubio coming out like that, making a bold declaration of his belief, he's the Secretary of State, right? This is what they're afraid of. This is why the FBI targeted fundamentalist Mormons, the Latin Mass Catholic attenders, and other Christian groups, right? Because, and this is ultimately why they came after the Tea Party and all these things, because behind these, quote, conservative values is a Christian worldview that will not allow you to redefine certain things like your gender. It will not allow you to redefine things like the family. It will not allow you to redefine things like the sacrament of marriage, right? These are sacred. These are beyond the government's reach in the peasant's mind and the Christian's mind. So to hear this openly declared at his funeral by some of the most powerful people on the planet, this is what they were afraid of. Not the debate of ideas, but the foundation of principle behind them. And anybody who's ever carried that foundation of truth, that the truth is what you're debating, they wind up in a situation like Tucker Carlson describes. And I don't think that his comparison here is very different from a time 2,000 years ago to a time today. And for those of you that spend time with us at 1776 Live, you know that this is right along the lines of the things that I say regularly.
This is the most unbelievable thing I think I've ever seen. And I don't... Whatever happens next in America, I hope it's in this direction, because God is here and you can feel it. And Charlie would have loved this, not just because he loved large groups of people, but because ultimately he was a Christian evangelist. And it actually reminds me of my favorite story ever. So it's about 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, and Jesus shows up and he starts talking about the people in power, and he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people, and they hate it, and they just go bonkers. They hate it, and they become obsessed with making him stop. This guy's got to stop talking. We've got to shut this guy up. And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about, what do we do about this guy telling the truth about us? We must make him stop talking. And there's always one guy with the bright idea, and I could just hear him say, I've got an idea, why don't we just kill him? That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Everything is inverted, and the Beatitudes tell it, I think, the most crisply. Everything is sort of the opposite of what you think it's going to be. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. That is true, and you can feel it here.
What Tucker Carlson did there, making the comparison to what happened 2,000 years ago with Christ and what happens today with truth tellers, I think is appropriate. It's a tale as old as time. And so anyways, again, huge revival, huge awakening surrounding Charlie Kirk's death and this memorial. Before we continue on, we're going to be hearing about some commentators about this awakening that they're watching happening under their feet. But before we do that, I need to tell you guys about Patriot Mobile. And I don't know why I need to tell you guys about Patriot Mobile. Okay, Patriot Mobile is America's only, speaking of Christian, conservative wireless provider, and they're putting their money where their values are. Every call you make helps fund causes that protect faith, family, freedom, and our Constitution. And I have it on good rumor that Charlie Kirk had Patriot Mobile. Right now, Patriot Mobile is giving you an entire month of service absolutely free when you switch and use the promo code COURAGE25. That's right, your first month is on them. You'll get reliable nationwide 4G and 5G coverage, affordable family plans for you and your family, and 100% U.S. customer service support. And the best part, you know your dollars are supporting causes you believe in. Go to patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT today. That's patriotmobile.com, promo code COURAGE25 for 1 month free of service. Patriot Mobile is on our list of approved carriers at 1776 Live. They will help guard your data privacy. And the one thing that they can do that the other cell phone providers don't do, and I know this from absolute personal experience, they will not give the government your information without a valid warrant. Unlike AT&T and Verizon, who I believe both turned over all their call data, including Bank of America and a few other banks, to the government after January 6th. Patriot Mobile did not do that. I'd like to make a side endorsement for Old Glory Bank as well. While other banks were canceling January 6th defendants, Old Glory Bank wasn't. In fact, the other banks were using excuses like, oh, the Patriot Act makes it so we have to do this. Not true. Patriot Mobile was opening accounts and keeping accounts open for January 6ers because they followed the law. Patriot Mobile, and I'll have to shamelessly throw in there, Old Glory Bank, two companies cut from the same cloth. Okay, this is Scott Adams talking about the revival that's happening because of the Charlie Kirk assassination.
Depending on what you're watching it on. But best wishes to all of you people who are experiencing probably almost everyone is feeling some kind of religious revival. And if you were the Democrats and you were watching this, forget about the politics of it. There's something that's beyond politics now. We've entered some new domain. But if you're a Democrat, whatever this power is that's been unlocked, I don't know where it goes, but it looks like a powerful, positive force, and it may not be what you had in mind if you're a Democrat. So if you're a Democrat, today would be a day to just stay quiet. That would be my advice. I'm not going to say something rude like, hey, you guys just shut up. Just today, the best thing you can do if you're a Democrat, unless you're being supportive and saying something positive, the best thing you can do today, the smartest thing you can do, take the day off. This is not your day. So
Scott Adams is by no means a, quote, Christian, but, and he talks about this repeatedly, he supports the Christian worldview. He thinks it works, okay? He sees this. This is an awakening. This is a revival. And he's smart to tell the Democrats, take the day off, right? You don't want to offend people's deeply guarded sense of who they are. And that's what the Democrats do. They throw dynamite at that foundation. They throw dynamite at your gender. They throw dynamite at your family. They throw dynamite at your religious beliefs. They throw dynamite at anything you hold precious, sacred, and hold as true. They want to destroy that. They want to remove your North Star. This is, by every account, a civilizational struggle. There is a struggle between substance and form, between the real and the fake. And with the rise of AI, we're getting to the point where the form, the law will become perfected. No one will be able to get out. There will be no one lost in the cracks, right? Everybody will be marked, tracked, digital ID, on and on we go. We are at the beginning of that phase of reality. And how we project into that machine our values is going to take place over the next 4, 5, or 10 years. This presidency and the next presidency, how they carve back executive power and the places that they expand it and the precedent they set and how they use it is going to make a big, big difference. The last generation saw a two-tiered system of justice. The last generation saw a traditional sense where the king and all of his men were above the law. Donald Trump stands in opposition to that. Now, just like any good struggle for civilization, there's a good chance that he's going to have to break some eggs to get it done. When I got into the DC gulag and I was sitting talking with other January 6 inmates about what could happen with the election, there was an ever persistent concern that the election would be stolen again. And my attitude was they will steal it. They will pull out all the stops. They've already done it once. They did it in front of everybody. They took Trump off X at the time it was Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the social medias. You want to talk about violating free speech. Holy cow. Who authorized that? Some FBI agent, right? You think those companies acted alone? If they did, they were pushed into that corner, right? So we've seen this double standard. Free speech for me, but not for thee. Gun rights for me, but not for thee. Privacy for me, but not for thee. All the different things, we've seen the double standard. I think Trump's had enough of it. The assassination of Charlie Kirk, as many have said, you killed the moderate. You killed our nice guy. You killed our saint, right? So now, guess what you get in return? You're going to get a little bit of retribution, a little bit of vengeance, as Ty Cobb says. Donald Trump posted this tweet yesterday. Pam Bondi, I have reviewed you know what? I'm going to share it. I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that, essentially, quote, same old story as last time. All talk, no action. Nothing is being done. What about Comey, Adams, Shifty Schiff, Letitia? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. End quote. Then we almost put a Democrat-supported U.S. attorney in Virginia with a really bad Republican past. Remember, this is the Eastern District of Virginia, where allegedly the attorney that was there would not indict Letitia James on election or on mortgage fraud. A woke rhino who was never going to do his job. That's why two of the worst Dem senators pushed him so hard. He even lied to the media and said he quit, that we had no case. No, I fired him, and there is a great case, and many lawyers and legal pundits say so. Lindsey is a really good lawyer. This is who he's now nominated, and likes you a lot. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now. President John DJT. Okay, sounds like Donald Trump's getting a little bit serious about Pam getting something done. Because yes, here we are 9 months into Donald Trump's presidency, 8 months into Donald Trump's presidency, and we've seen no arrest from this grand conspiracy. We've seen no arrest from Russiagate. We've seen nothing happen. We've seen, maybe there was an interview with one of the guy that Comey was passing top secret information to. I mean, he got summoned to a grand jury about what? No idea, right? Totally in the secret. Now, Donald Trump at Charlie Kirk's funeral had some key words today, because one of the things that Erica said was she forgave the killer. Now, I understand that. You have to forgive the people that trespass against you. It's the only way in the big ledger in the sky that you end up having a clean ledger before your maker, right, at Judgment Day. I understand that. I understand her wanting to do that. She doesn't want to carry that blood on her hands. However, Donald Trump does not exactly feel the way. He doesn't love the people who hate him. He says something completely different.
But now missionary with a noble spirit and a great, great purpose. He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent. And I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica. But now Erica can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent. Charlie's angry. Looking down, he's angry at me now. Missionary with a noble.
Trump went on to basically say, I hate my opponent, and we're going to do something about it. So he said that at Charlie's funeral, and I think he's right. There has to be accountability. Another thing that happened yesterday was Donald Trump and Elon Musk reunited. This was actually a pretty sweet moment, and there's a longer video of their interaction, but there's no words here.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome
So when Elon Musk and Donald Trump sat down together, right, they shook hands. Donald Trump tapped Elon on the knee. Now, the thing that my sound's a little jarbly. Oh, I had to come off that video. The thing that I appreciated about seeing Donald and Elon Musk come back together is Elon Musk did something that was really horrendous. He called Donald Trump a pedophile on a tweet, right? Now, he deleted it, backed off of that, but he was like, the reason they won't release the Epstein files is because Trump's in them. Now, that has become this thing on the left, right? Get the Epstein files out because Trump might be in them. Who cares about Bill Clinton? Who cares about all these other people that might be involved? Trump might be in them. Okay. I proposed at the time that this was a pincer move, that Donald Trump was going to, and Elon were essentially going to split the base, the people who were truly loyal and the people who weren't, and that eventually there'd be some kind of reconciliation. I don't know that that's what happened yesterday, but they did get together. They talked. They seemed totally cordial. I wouldn't imagine that would have happened if Donald Trump really thought he was being, credibly alleged to be a pedophile. But pretty magnanimous on Trump's part to come back together. And I like to see those two guys making peace. And Charlie brought them back together. So here's Donald Trump talking about it on Air Force One.
Well, Elon came over and said hello. No, it's nothing to do with that. I thought it was nice. He came over, had a little conversation. We had a very good relationship, but it was nice that he came over. Well, Elon came over.
Elon came. Nothing negative said. I like it. I like it a lot. Elon is a very powerful influence. By himself, he doesn't seem to do all that great. I mean, he's got low approval ratings as an independent person, but when he teams up with MAGA, his ratings his approval goes through the roof, and he does get a lot of stuff done. Here's Donald Trump talking on before he gets on to Marine One, talking about arresting people. Get it done.
No, I just want people to act. They have to act, and we want to act fast. They were ruthless and vicious. I was impeached twice. I was indicted 5 times. It turned out to be a fake deal, and we have to act fast. One way or the other. One way or the other. They're guilty, they're not guilty, we have to act fast. If they're not guilty, that's fine. If they are guilty or if they should be charged, they should be charged. And we have to do it now.
So one of the things that prosecutors do all the time is they won't take a case unless they think they can win, right? So did my sound that bad? I came back. Oh, it's just when I'm coming off that. So one of the things that I'm sorry, got to retrace my thought there. So Donald Trump is like, listen, just charge them. Get them indicted. The process is the punishment. If they get acquitted, so be it. But stop sitting back and waiting, right? By this point, they'd already indicted Donald Trump. They'd already got these investigations going. They'd already gone after people around him. They're burning the clock right now. It's going to take 2 or 3 years for these things to go to trial. And you definitely want them to go to trial before the, quote, next president comes in and could wipe it all away with the stroke of a pen. So that's what Donald Trump's objective is. He's like, listen, get stuff going. I expect there to be some indictments this week or next. If not this week or next, when? Right? What do you need? You've presented all this public evidence. Lisa Cook, Letitia James, Adam Schiff. You go on and on and on with all these people. Obama's committed treason. Where's the indictments? Right? Get those ham sandwiches indicted. This is Stephen Miller talking about what they're going to do for accountability. So take a listen to this.
We will actually get accountability. We've been demanding accountability now for a decade. Our audience is well aware that this is the biggest political scandal we have ever seen, and an effort to undermine and take down a duly elected president. But now we want to see the tricksters face the consequences. Will they?
I have complete confidence in the Department of Justice to follow these facts, to follow this new, further avalanche of evidence, and to take all the necessary legal steps to ensure that the wrongdoers, the coup plotters, the schemers, and the insurrectionists are held fully accountable under the laws and Constitution of these United States. Yes, Maria, I believe that.
Now, last weekend, John Ratcliffe, CIA director, who is a former prosecutor, former DNI, told us that that the statute of limitations, the 5-year statute, does not apply when it comes to conspiracy. And he says the conspiracy is ongoing because they still won't admit it. The conspiracy is still happening. So what is your take on what Ratcliffe told us last week?
Oh, he's completely right. So several of the statutes I mentioned, we have not even come close to eclipsing the statute of limitations. But more than that, it is an ongoing and continuing conspiracy. It continued through the entirety of President Trump's first term. It continued through the entirety of President Biden's term in office, and it continues to this day. There are still deep state coup plotters who are trying to conceal and hide this information on behalf of the people they are protecting. There are still staffers in Democrat offices who know the full truth, who are concealing that truth. So all of this behavior, all of this conduct collectively means the conspiracy hasn't ended, is ongoing. Comey in particular has throughout the years engaged in conduct and lies, public statements, and testimony in front of Congress. False testimony whose sole purpose was to perpetuate and continue the conspiracy. So I have every hope and expectation that the Department of Justice, under the leadership of our courageous Attorney General, will follow these facts and follow the evidence and deliver justice. Because if we have a country where we can continue to have FBI careerists and CIA careerists, deep staters who will fabricate and doctor evidence, who will create and produce fake material, fabricated material, phony information to try to go after their political enemies up to and including the president. If we continue to create the impression and the reality that there is not a severe criminal penalty for such conduct, it will never stop. It will never desist. It will keep on going forever. And we will continue to have a country that is sabotaged endlessly by the production of fake documents, fake material, fake plots, against democratically elected officials. We can't have that. There must be consequences.
Well,
there must be consequences. He is the deputy chief of staff. When he talks like that, it is some strong words. Now, how'd you get to the point where they can feel so strongly about this and they understand the depth of the lawfare? One of the challenges, I had this happen yesterday. Charlie Kirk was assassinated. My attitude has been, this is a continuation of the war that I got wrapped up in on January 6th. I said, walking away from the Capitol on January 6th, I thought that was like the first official incident of this quote unquote civil war. The Civil War is a cultural war, right? It's a battle for the minds and souls of the people. And Charlie Kirk's assassination drew the battle lines. This is a civilizational battle. This is about Christianity and the worldview that we are created by a divine creator, and a worldview that says that we just evolved and you individually mean nothing. There's only the collective. There's only the people. There's only the state. There is no you. This is a stark battle line in that war. The enemy has become clear. Eric Trump, when he was on with Joe Pags, who I used to listen to every night in prison, he came on at 7 p.m. and I'd listen to him for about an hour or two before I'd go listen to Jimmy Fallon. Again, I walked around prison with a headphone in my ear most of the time, okay, because I could not tolerate being there. I needed to listen to something else. Also, I was hanging on to every possible bit of news about the election. But Eric Trump kind of goes through and details the lawfare that happened against him and his family and Trump supporters. So you have to understand the depth and the breadth of this lawfare to really understand how sincere how people like Stephen Miller can get so sincere and talk so strong.
That was the guy that got the call from the FBI, from the New York Times, from the Washington Post. Eric, I hear you have servers in the basement of Trump Tower communicating directly with the Kremlin. I mean, you can't make this up, right? Like, first of all, we don't have servers in the basements because basements flood. You don't put servers in basements.
Right.
Second of all, we're largely like a cloud-based computing company, right? And they perpetuated this narrative for 3 years. They pinned this biggest nuclear superpowers against each other. So, one greedy woman could get three more votes. I mean, I was there with my father when they raided Mar-a-Lago, right? And I went on TV that night and I said to Hannity, I think Hannity was the first show I went on.
Right.
And I said to Hannity, do you really believe that the FBI raided Donald Trump's home, Mar-a-Lago, the Winter White House, without Joe Biden knowing, based on the recommendation of the National Archives? Like, do you really believe that's what happened?
Right.
And sure enough, Joe Biden's out there. Oh, I know nothing about this. I know absolutely nothing about this. I don't know anything about this. Right. And then sure enough, he was at the center of it, and Obama was at the center of it, and the whole thing was weaponized, and the whole thing was set up, and the folders that they planted at Mar-a-Lago. I was the guy that got the call, and I spent a lot of time talking about this in the book. I was the guy that got the call, from the FBI. Immediately turn off all security cameras at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, it's obviously a club. Like, I'm not turning off the security cameras at Mar-a-Lago. Like, why are you not letting our lawyers? I mean, they literally made our lawyers wait outside the front gate.
Yeah.
And I mean, time and time again, the impeachments were shams. The dossiers were shams. They tried to break up my father's marriage with Melania based on a dossier. They tried to divide Ivanka, Don, and I. They tried to split our entire family up. They tried to bankrupt us. They tried to take our name off of every building around the world. $600 million judgments from crooked judges, 91 felony counts. Al Capone had 1 felony count. Donald Trump had 91. Mugshots. They did everything they could to destroy a man, to destroy a family. And it's, and not to mention, I mean, look what they did to the streets around this country.
Oh, yeah.
They were leaving pallets of bricks on Michigan Avenue in Chicago so that people would come by, grab bricks, and throw them through storefronts. And guess what? The January 6th grandmother who walked into the Capitol to take a selfie, the FBI broke into her phone. But no, they didn't care to find out who firebombed, who threw a Molotov cocktail into St. John's Episcopal Church,
right,
which is a small little church across from the White House that every president since Abraham Lincoln has gone to before. So this church is half burning to the ground and is smoldering. They never found the person who did that. They never found the people that destroyed our city, Seattle, Minneapolis, Portland, Chicago, New York. I mean, and just about every other major metropolitan area in this country.
Right.
But yet, they weaponized the hell out of it. They went after people on January 6th. They didn't give them a trial for 5 years and let them rot in jail. Right. I mean, it was the deepest corruption, not to mention weaponizing the IRS to go after anybody who searched the word Bible. or weaponizing the IRS for anybody who stayed at a Trump hotel, or weaponizing the IRS for anybody who searched term MAGA. I mean, these people are sick.
Yeah.
And they should pay the ultimate price for what they did. And not to mention taking us off of Instagram and Facebook and depriving us, of voice and gag ordering all of us. And now all of a sudden they say that, Donald Trump is weaponizing government. Give me a break.
Give me a break. Donald Trump is weaponizing government. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, he's taking the tools that you guys created and weaponizing. All right, one last ad for today, and this one is Rumble Premium. Rumble Premium is something that we broadcast onto, and I'm supposed. Oh, look, does not match. What does that mean? What are you trying to tell me here? Can't do it. Look at that. Indulge me for just a moment here, folks. Huh. Interesting. All right. Well, never mind. You guys aren't going to get another ad. That's just the way it is. You guys probably love that. Okay. So Eric Trump describing this ongoing coup was a process. And as Stephen Miller said, it's still going. These people are still involved. Katie Britt last week, when Kash Patel was at the Senate testifying, she started asking about the funding of these Antifa groups. We need to start seeing this when we talk about there are lots of individual pockets. They're tied together by ideology. And in some cases, they're actually tied together by funding, right? So this is where you get people who are ideologically driven in government, able to get money, who then drive that money down onto the streets. And Kash Patel has promised to go after this, and Katie Britt is inquiring exactly kind of what this investigation is going to look like.
I want to read you some words of Vice President J.D. Vance. He said, if we want to stop political violence like what happened to Charlie Kirk, we have to be honest about the people who are celebrating it and the people who are financing it. My question to you is, in light of Charlie's murder and all of the things that we have just referenced and have been talking about today, what steps is the FBI taking to more aggressively crack down on those who promote, encourage, finance, fund these types of engagements and this type of political violence?
Thank you, Senator, for your kind words. So in terms of how we crack down on the root cause of this violence, for now putting aside the ideological motivations and how they got there, the monetary issue is a real issue. And as I've said before, we follow the money. So we work with our partners at the Treasury Department to trace where the money came from, how these individuals paid for the training they received or the platforms they were using, and also how these individuals collectively got together in whatever groups they were on whatever social media sites they were on, to utilize clickbait to make money for their ideology. And so to trace all of those, we are using, not just in Charlie's investigation, but others, lawful process and serving 2703D orders on any entity that is related in any way financially to any of these criminal acts of violence. And we are going to hold them accountable with our partners at the Department of Justice.
Excellent. I would love to stay abreast of that, and we must get to the bottom of it. We must follow the money. Someone is funding this discourse. Do you believe, obviously there are people here, unfortunately American citizens, that may be engaged in that, but do you also believe that some of this may be coming from overseas?
Yes.
Okay, let's.
So right now they've been declared a domestic terror organization. And presumably, we're getting close to them being declared a foreign terror organization. The Netherlands, I believe, voted in their parliament to consider them a terror organization. There was one other nation that declared it, and I think England is looking at it. So that's all, it's all a pretty big deal. Going after terror networks and things like that is a pretty big deal. Now, I wanted to read something to you guys, and this is, let me get the screen shared here. Okay. All right. So this is a little white page article about these networks. So I'm going to read the highlighted portions. This hidden network, buried within agencies, NGOs, think tanks, and political operatives, directs unrest not just for ideological theater, but for outcomes ranging from political sabotage to economic harm, even mortal violence. While others chase fame, fortune, or clicks by selling simplistic stories, the reality is darker. External forces have penetrated the highest levels of government, flanking the president himself. Their goal is not continuity of democracy, but continuity of control. Remember, this is all about power. The reality is that the participants act out of ideology, identity, and moral obligation. They are not mercenaries to be bought off. They are volunteers who behave, who believe. The failure of policymakers and analysts lies in how they continue to treat protest movements as if they were transactions, as if the critical question is always who paid whom and where the money came from. That framework does not capture the reality of what drives these networks. The true core of energy is not financial. It is the spread of ideas, the cultivation of affinity, and the work of cultural organizers and narrative engineers who bind people together for something far more resilient than a payroll, which, by the way, this is what we are doing. Right? We are trying to span space and time with ideas to project our values out into the future, from the distant past out into the future, right? And to get people to believe in our civilization and act for themselves to maintain it and expand it. They have the opposite ideological view, and they understand that it's the ideas that will outlast the funding. The federal government is hamstrung here. They can only approach these things in terms of commerce and regulation of commerce. They can't go after free speech or your ideas. They can go after your funding. Hopefully, if they can get less people talking about this by going after the criminal funding enterprise, then the idea won't spread as much. But they really can't get in front of the idea because they can't touch it. And that makes them weak. That's also why MAGA can't be stomped out. That's why the Tea Party couldn't be stomped out. That's why Christianity can't be stomped out, is it goes beyond the power of the state to control without exercising plain out tyranny. And eventually people will figure out when you're using tools of the state to do it. So, for example, when you make all churches commercial entities by giving them an IRS, nomination, 501c3, in order to be tax exempt, now the government can determine what your activities are in order to be tax exempt. They can get into the realm of ideas by regulating some form of commerce, the money. When governments and commentators reduce unrest to the question of money, they do more than miss the point. They hand the movement a gift by declaring that protesters are simply, quote, paid. They allow organizers to portray themselves as authentic, misunderstood, and dismissed by the establishment. This was exactly what happened during the 2020 Black Lives Matter uprisings, when dismissals of demonstrators as, quote, outside agitators or, quote, funded by Soros only strengthened the protesters' sense of legitimacy. The oversimplification turned into proof in the eyes of participants, and the system could not or would not understand their grievances. I've lived through this. People said J6ers are getting paid, just like they said Black Lives Matter participants are getting paid. The truth is 99% of people who participate in these protests and activities are not getting paid. It's the 1% organizers that may be getting paid, right? And the question is, if you take out the organizer, do you actually take out the movement? Until policy shifts to recognize that the real infrastructure is narrative. What did we say at the beginning? Lindy Lee told us this. This is about narrative control, right? This is about how we tell the story. Ideological and cultural, not transactional. Every attempt to counter these movements will fail. Worse, it will continue to validate them, because misdiagnosis strengthens the belief among participants that they are authentic and the system is corrupt. The architecture of modern unrest is stenographic. What looks chaotic is carefully coordinated. What looks underfunded is strategically resourced. What looks spontaneous has been in preparation for months or even years. To treat it otherwise is to walk blindly into the trap it sets. Make no mistake, funding is indeed necessary to conduct these operations. Without money, there can be no travel stipends, meeting spaces, digital platforms, legal defense funds, or media campaigns. It provides the infrastructure, the communication backbone, the flyers, the live stream equipment, and the modest stipends that allow a handful of professional organizers to dedicate themselves full time. But funding alone does not create a movement. It's simply the kindlewood laid at the base of the fire. By elevating these false patriots, the true architects of unrest remain hidden. Their control over the narrative shielding the machinery that undermines both Trump and the people. This pattern, seen in Serbia, repeated in Ukraine, refined in Hong Kong, and now deployed in America, ensures that the public sees curated heroes rather than architects of unrest. It is not about truth, but about control, about continuity of control. Those who truly uncovered the hidden architecture are ignored or smeared because their work threatens to unmask not just the protest, but the fourth unelected branch of government itself. Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and many others have faced similar disruptions. Networks that present themselves as grassroots environmental groups anti-austerity protests, or pro-immigrant coalitions. In these countries, often trace their organizational DNA back to the same funding hubs. The tactics look local, but the strategic fingerprints are global. By the time the playbook reached the United States, summer 2020, it was already familiar. The shield walls in Portland, the branded murals, the mass occupations, these were not novel improvisations. They were iterations of methods tested in Belgrade, Kyiv, Tbilisi, and Hong Kong. The same infrastructure reappeared after the 2020 presidential election when the No Kings mobilizations were rolled out. The introduction is only the beginning. In the coming parts, we will expose the specific tactics of affinity cells, the institutional players, funding and directing them, the false allies who claim to stand with President Trump while orchestrating chaos for their own game. By revealing the hidden architecture, we aim to empower the public with the truth, dismantling the narratives that threaten the nation's future. To be effective against this inviolable enemy, we must begin with acknowledging that modern unrest is not mercenary but ideological, not transactional but narrative, not linear but stenographic. I like that assessment a lot, so I wanted to share it with you guys. Okay, and to emphasize the damage that can happen to us, I got to do a little stop share thing. To emphasize the damage that can happen to us if we continue to go down this role of collective control, and touching on themes that we've shared before about the control grid, as Cass Austin Fitz talks about, something pretty monumental happened in Vietnam last week. Listen to this. This is where we're heading.
Why is Vietnam the testing ground for the new banking order? Well, recently, Vietnam imposed a requirement for a digital ID, including a biometric scan of everyone in order to have a bank account. And what they did to enforce this is they closed 86 million bank accounts and seized all of the assets in those accounts. So the owners of those accounts have no ability to do banking or access their funds because they chose not to sacrifice their privacy and submit to this biometric surveillance tracking mechanism. Well, this is not something that is going to stay in Vietnam. This is a test because if we look at, for example, what's going on with the European Central Bank and digital ID initiative in Europe, as well as the Real ID and the CBDC system FedNow being imposed in the United States, we can see that it is coming to us as well. So what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, what are you going to do about it? So Vietnam just closed millions of accounts because they weren't hooked up to the Real ID system, the digital ID system. This is coming. Right. This is absolutely coming. And here's the thing. We're starting to see different parts of this happening in the United States that are kind of weird. Remember that you'll own nothing and be happy? Imagine separating ownership of your house from the ownership of the land and then paying rent on the land as well as a mortgage for the house. I'll get you there.
The Austin housing market. Would you like to hear about how sinister the Austin housing market is? I just saw this listing on Realtor.com. It's for a 4-bedroom house that's listed at $293,000. I said, well, golly gee, for Austin, Texas, that's a pretty dang good price. Let's see what this house is all about. It says this property is listed as a leasehold. Don't know what that is. Through Jubilee's joint purchase program. Okay, haven't met Jubilee yet, but I'm willing to learn more. Making home ownership more accessible with a lower entry cost. Love to hear that. You buy the home while Jubilee buys the land and rents it back to you, heavily reducing upfront costs and keeping monthly expenses comparable to a traditional purchase. You can also buy the land back anytime. Alternatively, the property can be purchased outright for $799,000. Estimated land rent for a home in South Austin is $2,946 per month. This home is not just a residence, it's a sanctuary of modern comfort and style. So my understanding is that the benefit of this is that you pay for the house as though you're only paying for a $300K house. So your down payment is cheaper. You pay a mortgage of around $3,000 estimated. Well, mortgage and like principal and interest and all that. And then land rent You're renting the land that your home sits on. You own your home, and then you rent the land that your home sits on. I looked at the property history for this home. I can't find any prices pre-2024, but in like 2014, the tax assessment was $217,891. So presumably this home has tripled in price in the past decade. That's wild.
So home prices have gotten so out of control, tripling instead of just doubling in the last decade, that they're now starting to split the land from the house to sell them. You'll own nothing and be happy. You already kind of sort of rent your land as a joint tenant in common, except it's to the governor. And now you're going to rent it from Jubilee, and Jubilee will pay a small nominal tax, I'm sure, to the state. Wow. What a freaking mess. So we're going to wrap up the show today with a great video from Babylon Bee exposing the hypocrisy of the left, the Planned Parenthood crowd, and all these different people. This is a fun little skit, but I think it describes pretty much perfectly where we have arrived.
So good.
I'm a time traveler from the year 2025, and I've come here to kill you, Hitler.
Oh, not again. I'm never gonna have enough time to finish these paintings with all of these time travelers trying to kill me.
Well, I'm going to succeed.
Before you pull the trigger, can I just ask why? Why do all of you people want to kill me?
Isn't it obvious? I'm a progressive, a liberal, a fighter for social justice. And you are a fascist who implemented a reign of terror. And while the effects of your policies devastated the world for decades, soon we will be able to take back the White House, and we will be able to use the government to force people to follow our great ideas.
You want to use government power to force your ideas on the populace. Me too! That's fantastic!
What? No. Ugh. You and I have nothing in common. What I'm saying is there are people in our time with dangerous ideas, and we need to silence them.
Silencing those who disagree with you. I do that too! Oh, wunderbar! Oh, the Nazi movement will not die with me.
Don't give me that! I'm enlightened, and you're as bad as... well, as Hitler. Listen, what I'm trying to say is we are very close to implementing a utopia, as long as we can get rid of some certain undesirable people groups.
Yes, like the Jews.
Yes, like the Jews. Oh.
So, in the future, you also do not like the Jews?
Well, no. But we don't believe in segregating all the races like you do. I mean, except for like graduation ceremonies. And dorms. And hiring practices. Oh, and admissions policies. That sort of thing.
I, too, am a fan of the segregation. I'm sorry, I have to ask, is this a real firearm or is this some kind of toy for kids?
It's a flare gun. I'm trying not to support America's toxic gun culture. I'm a firm believer in gun control.
Gun control! This was one of my ideas, too. Ban them from the undesirables. Yes, look here. Oh, and your shirt. This is an organization founded by Margaret Sanger. Yes?
Wait, you know about Margaret Sanger?
Jawohl, of course. Oh, she's such a lovely person.
No. She's a fighter for reproductive rights, for women's empowerment,
and the eradication of undesirable populations by means of eugenics. Brilliant lady, very inspiring. I must use some of her ideas in our socialized healthcare system.
Socialized healthcare? That's not your thing. That's our thing.
No, it's very much my thing. Did you know that Nazi means National Socialist German Workers' Party? Nazi is just more catchy. Nazi. Just rolls off the tongue.
No. This can't be true. This has to be some sort of mistake. We are nothing alike. You're Adolf Hitler, evil right-wing fascist dictator, and I'm a feminist restorative justice advocate. And a vegetarian.
You're a vegetarian? Me too!
Okay, I am so confused right now. I came here with a clear goal in mind to kill the most evil man to have ever lived. Besides Ronald Reagan. But now that I'm meeting you in person, you're not at all what I thought you were. And your painting is actually really good. What do you call it?
I call it Ein Reich ohne Juden.
Wow. I don't know what that means, but it sounds beautiful.
It does, doesn't it?
Babylon Bee does such a good job with those. You guys, it comes down to that internal mindset, that internal understanding of who you are. The progressives today have the same heart as Hitler, as Stalin, as Pol Pot, as these others. They want control. They want power. They want to be authoritarian and dictators. And no matter which way you start in the moderate position on the spectrum, you go right or left too far, and it loops back around to authoritarian dictatorship. If you in your heart don't support the individual, the divine consciousness of man, you end up living and wanting people to live their entire lives and sacrifice everything for the group as long as you're running the group. That's how they see it. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. Shantini, that was great. Thank you so much. For Razor, we put servers in the basement closer to the network coming into the building, but in West, we don't flood like they do in many places. That is true. Okay, guys, that's it for the show today. No private. And tomorrow we will be covering more of the news, as always. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. No outro today, so we'll see you guys all later. Bye. Takes a second.